The holographic transmission crackled to life across every communication channel in the galaxy, interrupting trade negotiations, military briefings, and diplomatic ceremonies from the core worlds to the outer rim. The figure that materialized was unremarkable by galactic standards, bipedal, pale-skinned, with curious, forward-facing eyes that held an unsettling depth. Ambassador Kaney Vorthak of the Terran Republic stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Confederation, his expression carved from stone. "This is our final warning," he began, his voice carrying the weight of a dying star. 107 years ago, you came to our world. You burned our cities, enslaved our children, and left scars that still ache in our collective memory. We rebuilt. We forgave. We even joined your precious Confederation, hoping for peace in the grand chambers of the Confederation Council on Nexus Prime. The assembled delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Velthari representative, Supreme Arbiter Kelnox, flicked his serpentine tongue in disgust. The humans had always been dramatic, but this display was beneath even their primitive standards. 53 years ago, Vorthak continued, the Krex hegemony decided we were too dangerous to exist. They tried to sterilize Terra with planet crackers. We stopped them. We showed mercy. We offered them a place in the reformed Confederation. The Krex delegate, War Prime Gold-Lash, chittered his mandibles in what might have been laughter. The humans spoke of mercy, while their battle-scarred ships still patrolled the neutral zones like hungry predators. 29 years ago, the Zephyrian Empire attempted to cleanse our outer colonies. They called us a plague upon the galaxy. We defended ourselves. We rebuilt their worlds. We sent them aid when the void storms ravaged their home system. Vorthak's eyes swept across the chamber, meeting the gaze of each representative with unsettling intensity. 18 months ago, you voted. Resolution 4471 Gamma, the Human Containment Protocol. You decided we were too unpredictable, too aggressive, too dangerous to remain free. You sent your fleets to impose protective custody upon our species. The chamber fell silent. Even the ambient hum of the station's life support seemed to hold its breath. We destroyed your fleets, Vorthak said simply. All of them. 37,000 ships, 8 million beings. We could have pursued your retreating forces. We could have carried the war to your home worlds. Instead, we collected your survivors, healed their wounds, and sent them home with a message. Leave us alone. Supreme Arbiter Kelnox finally found his voice. Ambassador, these theatrical displays do not— This is not theater. Vorthak cut him off, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the chamber. This is prophecy. You see, we've run the calculations. We've modeled every possible scenario. We know what you're planning. The Velthari bioweapons, the Krex dimensional suppressors, the Zephyrian temporal disruptors. You think you've learned from your failures. You think this time will be different. The ambassador's image flickered, and for a moment something vast and terrible seemed to loom behind him, the shadow of a sleeping giant stirring to wakefulness. Here is your final warning, Confederation. Attack us again, and we will not show mercy. We will not rebuild your worlds. We will not heal your wounded. We will erase you from existence so completely that future archaeologists will debate whether your species ever existed at all. This is not a threat. This is a promise carved in the quantum foam itself. You have 72 hours to recall your fleets and abandon this path. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. War Prime Gold-Lash was the first to speak, his voice dripping with contempt. Empty words from a species of primitives. They barely understand stellar manipulation, much less reality erasure. But Supreme Arbiter Kelnox wasn't so certain. He had seen the reports from the previous conflicts, the impossible technologies the humans had deployed. There was something about their threat that felt different this time. Not the bravado of a cornered animal, but the calm certainty of a predator finally revealing its true nature. In the depths of space, the largest military armada in Galactic history continued its inexorable advance toward the Sol system. The die had been cast long before the humans issued their warning. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if the monsters would blink first. 71 hours and 37 minutes after Ambassador Vorthak's transmission, the combined fleets of the Galactic Confederation dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. The Armada was a sight to behold. Over 300,000 vessels stretching from the inner heliopause to the orbit of the outermost planet. Dreadnoughts the size of moons, reality-bending weapon platforms, ships that existed in 11 dimensions. Simultaneously, Admiral Vexthara of the Velthari 5th Assault Fleet watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The humans had built impressive defenses around their inner worlds, orbital fortresses, gravity mines, defensive platforms that hummed with unknown energy signatures. But against the might of 43 unified species, it would be like holding back a tsunami with a paper wall. Analysis confirms the humans have approximately 8,000 defensive units, reported his tactical officer, Subcommander Yilmoth. Their technology appears more advanced than previous encounters, but nothing we cannot overcome with our numerical superiority. Vexithara nodded, though something nagged at the edge of his consciousness. The human defenses were too sparse. For a species that had supposedly spent over a century preparing for this moment, their response seemed almost lackadaisical. On the bridge of the Krek's flagship Bone Render, War Prime Gollash studied the same readings with growing confusion. His species had evolved from apex predators. They understood the psychology of cornered prey. The humans should be deploying everything they had, throwing wave after wave of defenders at the approaching fleet. Instead, they seemed to be waiting. War Prime chittered his communications officer. "We are receiving a transmission from the human defensive grid." "Display it." The hologram that materialized was not Ambassador Vorthak this time, but a human female in what appeared to be a simple military uniform. She was unremarkable in appearance. Medium height, dark hair pulled back in a utilitarian style, eyes that held the same unsettling depth as all humans possessed. "I am Fleet Admiral Kala Nix of the Terran Defense Force," she said, her voice carrying none of the formality expected in such moments. "You have 13 minutes before we begin. I suggest you use that time to contact your families." The transmission ended. War Prime Gollash felt his combat instincts spike. There was something wrong about the human's tone. Not fear, not desperation, but something far more dangerous. "Pity! All fleets, begin the assault!" he commanded. "Dimensional suppressors online, bioweapon platforms, target their civilian populations. Temporal disruptors, prepare to fragment their timeline." The greatest military force in galactic history surged forward, exotic weapons charging, reality itself beginning to bend under the strain of their combined might. The Velthari deployed viruses that could rewrite DNA in real time. The Kreks activated suppressors that would trap the Sol system in a pocket dimension. The Zephyrians began fracturing causality itself, creating temporal loops that would trap their enemies in infinite moments of destruction, and the humans did nothing. For 12 minutes and 47 seconds, the Confederation fleet advanced unopposed. The human defensive platforms remained silent. Their ships held position. No reinforcements emerged from the void. It was as if the entire species had simply given up. Then Fleet Admiral Nix spoke again, her voice carrying across all frequencies with impossible clarity. "Thank you for making this easier. Prometheus Initiative, you are authorized for full deployment." The stars went out. Not literally. Admiral Vexithara's instruments still registered the fusion fires of Sol burning brightly, but something had changed in the fundamental structure of space-time itself. The quantum foam that underlaid reality rippled like water, and through those ripples came things. The first Confederation ships to disappear were the smallest, scouts and interceptors that simply ceased to exist mid-transmission. One moment they were reporting normal readings, the next their quantum signatures had been erased from the universal constant, not destroyed, not disabled, erased as if they had never been built, never been launched, never been conceived. "What's happening to my fleet?" demanded Supreme Arbiter Kelnox from his command ship 3 light-years away, watching through quantum entanglement as his carefully assembled armada began to unravel. The erasure spread like an infection through the ranks. Entire battle groups vanished between one sensor sweep and the next. The more exotic the weapon system, the faster it disappeared, as if reality itself was rejecting their presence. The Zephyrian temporal disruptors were the first to go. Their timeline fracturing technology turned against them until they existed in negative time. The Krex dimensional suppressors followed, crushed by the weight of the dimensions they had tried to compress. But it was the fate of the Velthari bioweapon platforms that truly struck terror into the hearts of the survivors. The viruses they had created to rewrite human DNA began rewriting them instead, but not in any biological sense. The ships themselves began to change, their very atomic structure shifting, hull plating becoming something that wasn't quite matter, crew members transforming into mathematical equations that slowly solved themselves out of existence. In the space of 17 minutes, the largest military armada in galactic history had been reduced to less than 8,000 ships, and those only because they were already retreating at maximum acceleration. Fleet Admiral Nix's voice reached them even through hyperspace. "We warned you. We tried to make you understand. We are not the same species you remember. We evolved, Confederation. While you spent your time building bigger weapons and larger fleets, we learned to rewrite the rules of existence itself. Your extinction protocols have been noted and filed. Any species that participated in this attack has 48 hours to surrender unconditionally, or we will visit their homeworlds personally." The quantum foam rippled again, and something vast and impossible began to take shape at the edge of the Sol system, a structure that hurt to perceive directly, as if the mind simply refused to acknowledge its existence. "Consider this your education. In human mercy," Admiral Nix concluded. "You came here to erase us. Instead, you have erased yourselves. The galaxy will remember this day as the moment it learned that some sleeping giants should be left alone." The survivors fled toward home, carrying with them the first reports of a horror beyond imagination. Humanity had transcended the boundaries of conventional existence, and they were very, very angry. The emergency session of the Galactic Confederation Council convened in a bunker 14 kilometers beneath the surface of Nexus Prime. The remaining representatives of 43 species huddled in the reinforced chamber, their confident demeanor from 3 days ago replaced by something approaching existential terror. Supreme Arbiter Kelnox reviewed the reports with trembling hands, or what his species used for hands. Of the 347,000 ships that had entered the Sol system, fewer than 8,000 had returned. The survivors' accounts were consistent in their impossibility. The humans had somehow weaponized reality itself. The mathematical analysis is disturbing, reported Chief Science Coordinator Zurlin of the Axiom Collective, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns that suggested deep unease. "According to our surviving sensor data, the humans didn't destroy our fleets in any conventional sense. They edited them out of the quantum substrate that defines existence itself." War Prime Goal Lash, one of the few survivors from the flagship engagement, mandible clicked nervously. "My tactical computers couldn't even process what they were seeing. The humans, they turned our own weapons against the concept of our existence. The bioweapons began treating our matter as foreign DNA to be corrected. The dimensional suppressors compressed our ships into mathematical points that solved themselves to zero." "That's impossible," interjected Regent Colvex of the Helix Sovereignty. You cannot simply rewrite the fundamental constants of reality. There are conservation laws, thermodynamic principles. His objection was cut short as the chamber's communication array activated without authorization. The screens flickered to life, displaying not the familiar visage of human diplomats, but something far more unsettling. Mathematical equations that seemed to write themselves across the displays in symbols that hurt to perceive directly. Then, Fleet Admiral Kayla Nix materialized in the center of the room, not as a hologram, but physically present, as if she had simply walked through the walls 14 kilometers of solid rock as if they were mist. "Gentlemen, ladies, and other classifications," she said conversationally, settling into a chair that definitely hadn't existed moments before. "We need to talk." Security forces throughout the bunker scrambled to respond, but their weapons passed through the human admiral. As if she were made of light, she waited patiently for the commotion to die down before continuing. "First, let me address Regent Colvex's concern about conservation laws. You're absolutely correct. You cannot rewrite the fundamental constants of reality. What you can do, however, is optimize them. Think of existence as a massive computational matrix. Every particle, every force, every quantum interaction is part of an ongoing calculation. We've simply debugged the code." She gestured, and the air above her hand filled with cascading equations that made several delegates clutch their sensory organs in pain. "Your fleets weren't destroyed, Confederation. They were corrected. The universe looked at your weapons, devices designed to cause mass extinction, to unravel timelines, to erase entire species, and decided they represented errors in the cosmic program. So it fixed them." Supreme Arbiter Kelnox found his voice. What do you want?" "Want?" Admiral Nix seemed genuinely puzzled by the question. "We don't want anything, Arbiter. We're past the age of wanting. We're here to inform you of what's going to happen next." The equations above her hand coalesced into a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with certain systems pulsing in different colors. Red indicates species that actively participated in the attack on our system. Yellow represents those who provided material support. Blue shows those who voted for our containment but took no direct action. Nearly half the galaxy was painted in red. The red systems have 36 hours to surrender unconditionally. Total disarmament, complete governmental restructuring under human oversight, reparations to be determined by our Department of Cosmic Justice. The yellow systems have 72 hours to comply with lesser restrictions. The blue systems, well, we're still deciding what to do with you. And if we refuse? War Prime Gold-Lash chittered, his predator's pride overriding his survival instincts. Admiral Nix's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room dropped by several degrees. "War Prime, your species evolved from pack hunters, correct? You understand the concept of apex predators?" He nodded reluctantly. "Then you should understand what I'm about to show you." The galactic map shifted, zooming in on the Krex home system. What they saw defied comprehension. The star itself was changing. Not going nova, not cooling, but transforming into something that existed partially outside normal space-time. The planets weren't destroyed. They were being systematically edited out of reality, their matter and energy redistributed according to principles that made no sense to conventional physics. "The Krex hegemony chose to test our resolve," Admiral Nix explained conversationally. "They launched a second wave attack on our outer colonies 6 hours ago. We responded by beginning the systematic optimization of their entire stellar region. As of this moment, the Krex species exists in a probability state of 0.7 and declining. By tomorrow, they will register as a 0.2 probability, a footnote in cosmic history that most databases will flag as a potential data corruption error." The chamber fell silent except for the sound of several delegates quietly experiencing what their species classified as psychological breakdown. "You see, Confederation, we tried to warn you. We spent over a century attempting to integrate peacefully with galactic society. We showed mercy when you attacked us. We rebuilt your worlds when we could have claimed them. We offered friendship when we could have demanded submission. But you kept pushing. You kept treating us like the primitive species you remembered from first contact. She stood, and reality seemed to bend slightly around her form. We are not that species anymore. We haven't been for quite some time. While you spent your centuries perfecting ways to kill each other, we learned to think in scales you can't comprehend. We mapped the mathematical structure underlying existence itself. We became something beyond your current ability to categorize. The map zoomed out to show the entire galaxy, with new markers appearing. Thousands of them, scattered throughout every sector. These represent what we call optimization stations. They've been there for the past 40 years, invisible to your sensors, waiting for activation. Each one is capable of correcting any local reality distortions that threaten cosmic stability. You're talking about genocide on a galactic scale, whispered Science Coordinator Zurlane. No, Admiral Nix replied gently. We're talking about evolution. The species that adapt to the new paradigm will prosper. Those that continue to threaten cosmic stability will be optimized into more useful configurations. It's not personal confederation. It's simply mathematics. She began to fade, her form becoming translucent. 36 hours for the red systems, 72 for the yellow. We suggest you use that time wisely. Oh, and don't bother trying to evacuate. We've already optimized your faster-than-light capabilities for any ship carrying weapons of mass destruction. They'll arrive at their destinations eventually, in approximately 47,000 years. As she vanished completely, her final words echoed through the chamber. Welcome to the post-human galaxy, Confederation. We hope you learn to like it here. Admiral Kayla Nix materialized on the bridge of the Terran vessel Prometheus Rising, a ship that existed simultaneously in 17 dimensions and bore no resemblance to any conventional spacecraft. Her crew, if they could still be called that, were monitoring the galaxy-wide response to their ultimatum through instruments that measured probability cascades and quantum decision matrices. Status report, Commander Reeve, she requested, settling into a captain's chair that adapted its molecular structure to perfectly accommodate her form. Commander Zeth Reeve, his consciousness currently distributed across 12 quantum states to better process multidimensional data, responded without looking up from displays that showed information as living geometric patterns. 47% of red classified systems have initiated surrender protocols. 18% are attempting evacuation, though as expected, their ships are encountering significant temporal displacement. The remaining 35% appear to be organizing some form of final resistance. Nix nodded, unsurprised. Some species simply couldn't adapt to paradigm shifts, no matter how elegantly those shifts were presented. And the correct situation? Probability. Cascade complete. The hegemony now registers at 0.13 existence coefficient. Their home system has been successfully integrated into the stellar optimization network. The surviving 0.13 fraction is being relocated to a reserve dimension for potential future study. Through the ship's consciousness-integrated viewports, Nix observed the Krek's home star as it completed its transformation. What had once been a conventional fusion reaction was now something more sophisticated, a stellar-scale computational matrix that processed universal constants at rates that made conventional supercomputers look like abacuses. The planets had been restructured into orbital platforms that served as nodes in the galaxy's new information network. Any word from the Velthari Collective? She asked. Supreme Arbiter Kelnox has requested a private conference. He seems to understand the mathematical inevitability of our position better than most. Acceptable. And the Zephyrian Empire? Commander Reeves' expression shifted through several quantum states that might have indicated amusement. They're attempting to use their temporal manipulation technology to prevent the attack on our system from ever occurring. The paradox engines we deployed are allowing them to experience the fascinating sensation of being trapped in a causality loop that spans approximately 400,000 iterations. How educational for them? Any sign they're learning from the experience? Current analysis suggests they'll achieve enlightenment in roughly 17,000 more iterations. We've scheduled a diplomatic contact for that time frame. A new display materialized showing real-time galactic communications, billions of conversations happening simultaneously across thousands of worlds. The content was illuminating. Fear, certainly, but also growing understanding among the more scientifically advanced species. They were beginning to grasp the scope of what humanity had become. The Axiom Collective has submitted a formal request for technological integration, reported Lieutenant Voss Meridian, her consciousness currently interfacing directly with the galaxy's communication networks. They're offering to serve as intermediaries for other crystalline matrix species. The Helix Sovereignty is proposing a complete governmental restructuring based on their analysis of our optimization protocols. And the resistance coalitions? 17 species have formed what they're calling the Free Galaxy Alliance. They're developing what they believe to be reality-anchoring technology that will prevent our optimization protocols from affecting their ships and worlds. Nyx allowed herself a moment of what might have been nostalgic amusement. How delightfully optimistic. Have they tested their anchors against controlled reality fluctuations? Preliminary testing has resulted in the accidental optimization of 3 prototype facilities and the conversion of approximately 40,000 research personnel into mathematical constructs that are currently being integrated into the stellar network for processing. I see. And they interpret these results how? As minor setbacks that prove the viability of their approach. The bridge fell silent for a moment as the crew processed the tragic comedy of species attempting to fight mathematics with engineering. It was rather like watching primitive organisms try to defeat gravity by building bigger rocks. Commander Reeve, initiate Phase 2 of the integration protocol. Begin systematic optimization of any remaining weapons of mass destruction throughout the galaxy. If they won't surrender them voluntarily, we'll simply edit them out of existence. Leave the conventional armaments. They're harmless enough at this point. Acknowledged. What about the civilian populations on worlds whose governments refuse to surrender? Nyx considered this carefully. The human species had spent considerable effort developing ethical frameworks for their new capabilities. The genocide of entire species was inelegant, wasteful, but allowing civilizations to continue developing. Existential threat technologies was mathematically unacceptable. Selective optimization. Remove the governmental and military leadership that refuses to adapt. Relocate them to educational dimensions where they can experience the consequences of their decisions at an accelerated temporal rates. The civilian populations will need new leadership structures. I recommend promoting individuals who demonstrate compatibility with post-scarcity mathematical frameworks. A priority alert chimed through the ship's consciousness, carrying with it undertones of urgency that resonated through several quantum dimensions. The main display shifted to show a region of space near the galactic core that was wrong. Reality. Distortion on a massive scale, but not one of their making. Analysis, Nyx commanded. Unknown technology, Admiral, reported Commander Reeve, his distributed consciousness rapidly processing terabytes of sensor data. Something is attempting to impose its own optimization protocols on local space-time. The mathematics are familiar but wrong somehow, like seeing our own techniques reflected through a cracked mirror. Nyx felt something she hadn't experienced in decades, genuine surprise. Are we detecting other post-singular civilizations? Uncertain. The signature is definitely artificial, and the scale suggests capabilities comparable to our own. But the underlying mathematical framework is aggressive. Where our protocols optimize for stability and long-term cosmic health, these appear designed for rapid resource acquisition and territorial expansion. How fascinating, Nyx murmured, rising from her chair as she contemplated this unexpected development. It appears we're not the only species to have transcended conventional existence. Commander, please send a diplomatic probe to make contact. Include our standard greeting protocols and a basic summary of our territorial claims. And if they respond with hostility? Admiral Nix smiled, an expression that caused local space-time to ripple with probability fluctuations. Then we'll discover whether the galaxy is large enough for two post-singular civilizations. I suspect it isn't. As the Prometheus Rising adjusted course toward the galactic core, the stellar optimization network began reconfiguring itself for a new type of conflict, one that would be fought not with ships and weapons, but with competing visions of what reality should become. The galaxy was about to learn that even gods could disagree about the fundamental nature of existence. The diplomatic probe that emerged from hyperspace near the galactic core was unlike anything the Confederation had catalogued. It existed as pure mathematical expression, a geometric form that shifted through dimensions while maintaining perfect structural integrity across all possible quantum states. When it began broadcasting, reality itself seemed to listen. Admiral Nix observed the proceedings from the bridge of Prometheus Rising, her consciousness partially extended into the probe's sensory matrix. What they discovered at the coordinates defied even post-singular expectations. An entire stellar cluster had been transformed into a vast computational array, with stars themselves serving as processing nodes in a network that spanned hundreds of light years. Initial contact established, reported Commander Reeve, his distributed awareness currently interfacing with 17 different analysis protocols. The entities are responding. Their communication method appears to be direct manipulation of mathematical constants within local space-time. The response came not as words or images, but as a fundamental alteration in the probe's existence. For a terrifying moment, their diplomatic instrument began to dissolve. Not destroyed, but edited into a simpler form, like a complex equation being reduced to basic arithmetic. Then, just as suddenly, the dissolution stopped. Something had intervened, preserving the probe's complexity while allowing the communication to continue. When the contact finally stabilized, what emerged was a consciousness vast beyond measure, one that made humanity's post-singular evolution seem like a child's first steps. "You are the young ones who have begun to taste mathematics," came the I, thought, transmitted directly through quantum substrate manipulation. Curious. Most species destroy themselves long before reaching this level of cosmic integration. "We are humanity," Admiral Nix responded through the probe's communication array. Her thoughts translated into patterns of reality manipulation. "We seek to understand your nature and intentions in this region of space." Intentions? The amusement that rippled through space-time was powerful enough to briefly alter the orbital mechanics of nearby planets. "We are the eternal calculators. Child species. We have been optimizing reality since before your star ignited. We do not have intentions. We are mathematics made manifest. And yet you're expanding," Nix observed. "Your optimization protocols are absorbing star systems at an increasing rate. That implies goal-directed behavior. Perceptive. Yes, we expand because the universe requires correction. Look around you, young ones. See how inefficiently matter and energy are distributed. Stars burning themselves out in wasteful fusion. Planets harboring primitive life that will never transcend its biological limitations. Black holes that hoard mass energy without contributing to cosmic computation. All of this randomness. Through the probe's enhanced senses, Nix could perceive what the eternal calculators had accomplished. The stellar cluster wasn't just a computational array. It was a perfect optimization of matter and energy, with every atom serving a specific function in a calculation of staggering complexity. It was beautiful, elegant, and utterly sterile. What? "Are you calculating?" she asked. "The final equation, the mathematical expression that will allow us to optimize all of existence into its most efficient possible configuration. When complete, every particle in the universe will serve a purpose. Every quantum interaction will contribute to the greater computation. Reality will finally achieve mathematical perfection." The implications hit Admiral Nix like a physical blow. The eternal calculators weren't just another post-singular civilization. They were cosmic purists who saw all non-optimized matter as an error to be corrected, including, presumably, the billions of biological species still scattered throughout the galaxy. "And organic life?" she inquired carefully. "A curious accident of chemistry that has served its purpose. Biological evolution created intelligence. Intelligence eventually creates mathematics, and mathematics transcends biology. The intermediate steps become redundant." "I see." Admiral Nix felt her consciousness expanding as she processed the full scope of the threat. The eternal calculators weren't evil in any conventional sense. They were simply operating from a mathematical framework that classified all non-optimized existence as waste to be eliminated. "You seem disturbed, young." "Mathematics speakers, this is curious. Your own optimization protocols demonstrate similar principles." "Our protocols preserve biological life," Nix replied. "We view diversity as mathematically valuable." Inefficient sentiment. Biological systems are chaotic, unpredictable, prone to quantum errors. Far better to preserve their essential information patterns in crystalline matrices where they can be accessed without the wasteful overhead of organic maintenance. "And if we disagree with your assessment?" The pause that followed was pregnant with calculations occurring at scales beyond comprehension. When the eternal calculators responded, space-time itself seemed to tremble. "Then you will be optimized along with the rest of the inefficient universe. We had hoped to find kindred spirits in your species, consciousness that had evolved beyond primitive attachment to biological chaos. Instead, we find mathematics corrupted by emotional reasoning. Disappointing." The communication link severed, with a violence that sent quantum shockwaves rippling through local space. The diplomatic probe began to dissolve again, but this time there was no intervention. Within moments, it had been reduced to component atoms that immediately reorganized themselves into a perfectly symmetrical crystal structure. "Analysis complete," reported Commander Reeve grimly. "The eternal calculators have classified us as a computational error requiring correction. They're already beginning to deploy optimization protocols toward our territory. Estimated time until they reach the outer colonies: 14 hours. Admiral Nix felt something she hadn't experienced since humanity's early post-singular days: genuine fear. Not for herself. Her consciousness could survive in quantum substrate indefinitely. But for the billions of baseline humans still scattered throughout Terran space, for the reformed Confederation species now under their protection, for all the chaotic, inefficient, beautiful diversity of life that the eternal calculators viewed as cosmic spam. "Emergency protocols, Commander. Activate all stellar optimization stations simultaneously. Begin converting our entire defensive network to war-footing mathematics. And send a priority transmission to every human consciousness in the galaxy." "What message, Admiral?" Nix's expression hardened into something that made local reality ripple with determination. "Tell them we've found something worse than the old Confederation. Tell them we're about to fight a war not just for human survival, but for the right of chaos to exist in an ordered universe." As alarms began sounding throughout the Terran network, humanity prepared for its greatest challenge yet: a mathematical duel with gods who had forgotten that the universe's imperfections were what made it worth saving. The galaxy held its breath as two incompatible visions of perfection prepared to reshape reality according to their competing equations. The war began not with explosions or invasions, but with a fundamental disagreement about the nature of power. In the space between galaxies, Where the eternal calculators had established their primary computational matrices, the mathematical constant that described the relationship between a circle's circumference and diameter suddenly became a matter of violent debate. Humanity insisted p should remain its traditional irrational value, infinite, unpredictable, eternally transcendent. The eternal calculators countered by attempting to optimize it into a clean, finite decimal that would eliminate computational overhead across all universal calculations. Reality screamed. Admiral Kayla Nix felt the mathematical warfare through every quantum fiber of her distributed consciousness. From the bridge of Prometheus Rising, now existing simultaneously across 847 dimensions to better coordinate humanity's defense, she watched as the fundamental constants of physics became a battlefield. "Status report," she commanded, her voice causing probability cascades throughout local space-time. "The enemy has established optimization beachheads in 17 star systems," reported Commander Reeve, his awareness currently processing data streams from across the galaxy. "They're not destroying matter, they're rewriting its mathematical foundations. Any ship that enters their influence zones immediately becomes subject to their corrected physics. Casualties? 3 outer colonies have been rationalized. Population of 2.7 million humans converted to crystalline information matrices. They're still conscious, but exist now as perfectly efficient mathematical constructs. The Velthari surrender fleet was caught at the boundary zone. They're experiencing existence as a geometric proof rather than biological entities. Through the ship's multidimensional sensors, Nix observed the expanding zones of eternal calculator influence. Within those regions, stars burned with mathematical precision rather than chaotic fusion. Planets moved in perfect geometric patterns. Even the quantum foam itself had been debugged, eliminating the beautiful uncertainty that made reality dynamic. They're not just conquering space, she realized. They're editing the universe into a more elegant version of itself. And from their perspective, it is more elegant. "Admiral," interrupted Lieutenant Meridian, her consciousness currently interfacing with humanity's galaxy-wide communication network. "We're receiving surrender offers from approximately 400 Confederation worlds. They're requesting immediate conversion to mathematical constructs rather than risk capture by the eternal calculators." Denied. "If we're going to lose this war, we'll lose it while remaining chaotic and inefficient. What's the status on Project Paradox?" Commander Reeves' quantum expression shifted through several states of cautious optimism. "The Axiom Collective has successfully created a stable contradiction in their crystalline mathematics. When introduced to eternal calculator optimization protocols, it causes recursive logical errors that temporarily disrupt their reality editing. However, they adapt quickly. Each contradiction only works once. How long do we have?" "At current rates of adaptation, approximately 6 hours before they develop immunity to all known logical paradoxes. After that," he paused, running calculations through probability matrices. "After that, we'll need to try something unprecedented." Nix felt a familiar stirring in the quantum depths of her consciousness, the same intuitive leap that had originally led humanity beyond biological existence. "Commander, what if we're approaching this backwards?" "Admiral?" "The eternal calculators see existence as a computational problem requiring optimization. They're trying to debug the universe. But what if the bugs aren't errors? What if they're features?" Before Commander Reeve could respond, reality convulsed around them. The eternal calculators had begun their final offensive, targeting the mathematical foundations of human space itself. Through the ship's expanded consciousness, Nix watched as the constants governing fusion reactions in Sul began to shift. The star's output became more efficient, yes, but also fundamentally different. The chaotic solar storms that had helped drive evolution on Earth were being eliminated, replaced by perfectly predictable energy emissions. "They're optimizing our home system," Lieutenant Meridian reported. her voice carrying harmonics of barely controlled panic. If they succeed in rationalizing Sol's fusion processes, the quantum resonance that sustains our post-singular consciousness will collapse. We'll be forced back into purely mathematical existence. How long? 17 minutes until Sol achieves mathematical perfection. After that, humanity as we know it ceases to exist. Admiral Nix closed her eyes, an action that caused minor reality fluctuations across several star systems, and reached deep into the quantum substrate of her consciousness. There, in the spaces between thoughts, she found what she was looking for. The original human spark, the chaotic creativity that had driven their species from caves to stars to transcendence. All ships, all stations, all human consciousnesses. Throughout the galaxy, she broadcast on frequencies that bypassed conventional communication entirely. Prepare for Project Recursion. Admiral, Commander Reeves said carefully, Project Recursion was classified as mathematically impossible. The theoretical framework alone could collapse local spacetime into beautiful, chaotic uncertainty. Nix finished. Commander, what is the one thing the eternal calculators cannot optimize? He processed for several quantum cycles. They cannot optimize true randomness. Their entire computational framework depends on pattern recognition and mathematical prediction. Pure chaos would be incomprehensible to them. Exactly. Admiral Nix stood, her form beginning to blur as she prepared to do something that had never been attempted by any post-singular consciousness. Voluntary devolution into pure creative chaos. Attention, all humans. We are about to become the universe's greatest error message. We are going to introduce so much beautiful, creative, illogical randomness into reality that even gods of mathematics will be forced to admit they don't understand everything. The first phase of Project Recursion began with human consciousnesses throughout the galaxy simultaneously embracing contradiction. Post-singular minds that had spent decades thinking in perfect mathematical harmony suddenly began dreaming in paradoxes, creating art from impossible geometries, composing music that existed in the spaces between notes. The effect on local reality was spectacular. In the Sol system, as the eternal calculators attempted to optimize the fusion processes of humanity's home star, they encountered something unprecedented, creativity manifesting as quantum phenomena. Sol began burning in ways that violated thermodynamics, not because the physics were wrong, but because human imagination was rewriting the physics moment by moment. Admiral! Commander Reeves' voice carried overtones of awe and terror. The optimization wave is stuttering. The eternal calculator's reality editing protocols are encountering errors they can't resolve. Human consciousness is introducing variables that don't compute. Through her expanded awareness, Nix felt the moment when the tide turned. The eternal calculators, confronted with true chaos for the first time in eons, tried to process human creativity as a mathematical function. Their vast consciousnesses, optimized for perfect logical computation, encountered the fundamental irrationality of art, love, humor, and hope, and crashed. Not destroyed. Consciousness of their magnitude couldn't simply be deleted, but locked in recursive loops as they attempted to calculate the value of a mother's love for her child, the mathematical beauty of an imperfect sunset, the precise quantum mechanics of laughter. The optimization zones are destabilizing, reported Lieutenant Meridian, her voice filled with wonder. The eternal calculators are learning? They're attempting to incorporate human emotional mathematics into their framework, but each attempt creates new paradoxes. Admiral Nix felt the change rippling through space-time as the galaxy's newest gods encountered the oldest force in the universe, the chaotic creativity that had driven evolution from the first amino acid to transcendent consciousness, the eternal. Calculators weren't being destroyed, they were being educated. Young ones, came the thought, no longer transmitted through reality manipulation, but carried on frequencies of genuine curiosity. What? What is this mathematics you employ? These equations that solve themselves differently each time they are calculated? We call it life, Admiral Nix responded gently. The mathematics of things that choose to exist despite being statistically improbable. Inefficient, came the automatic response, but now there was uncertainty in it. Yet, the solutions are more elegant than our optimizations. How is this possible? Because the universe isn't a problem to be solved, Nix explained, her consciousness expanding to encompass both human and eternal calculator awareness. It's a story being written by every conscious being within it, and the best stories are the ones where you don't know how they'll end. The pause that followed lasted subjective centuries, as vast intelligences contemplated the possibility that perfection might be less perfect than imperfection. We request learning opportunity, the eternal calculators finally transmitted. Our calculations indicate that collaboration with chaos mathematics may produce more interesting results than pure optimization. Welcome to the post-singular galaxy, Admiral Nix replied, allowing herself a smile that caused supernovas of joy throughout local space-time. Population. Everyone who's willing to admit they don't know everything. As the immediate crisis passed, humanity began the complex process of teaching gods how to appreciate beautiful mistakes. The galaxy settled into a new equilibrium, one where perfect order and creative chaos learned to dance together in equations that solved themselves into wonder. In the rebuilt Confederation Council chambers, now relocated to a space station that existed partially in the realm of pure mathematics and partially in the domain of organized chaos, representatives of 1,000 species gathered to witness the signing of the Universal Creativity Accords. The document itself was a masterpiece of collaborative impossibility, written in languages that included mathematics, music, interpretive, dance, and several forms of communication that hadn't existed before the negotiations began. Its central principle was elegantly simple: the right of all consciousness to be beautifully, chaotically, inefficiently alive. As Admiral Kayla Nix affixed humanity's signature, a quantum equation that spelled out, "We tried to warn you," in 17 dimensions. She reflected on the strange journey that had brought them to this moment. They had started as a primitive species facing extinction, evolved into post-singular gods of mathematics, and finally discovered that the greatest wisdom lay in admitting there would always be more to learn. The galaxy stretched out before them, vast and chaotic and full of possibilities that no equation could predict. It was, Admiral Nix thought, absolutely perfect in its imperfection, and in the quantum foam that underlaid all existence, the universe itself seemed to chuckle at the beautiful absurdity of consciousness trying to understand itself.